Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar where we'll shed some light on the benefits of effective certificate discovery. IT teams are often faced with an increasing number of digital certificates, and those tasked with their management know the importance of knowing where your certificates are, because you cannot protect what you cannot see. For today, we have Henry Lam, Sales Engineering Manager, and Tim Callan, Chief Experience Officer here at Sectigo with us. They will be talking us through the importance of certificate discovery, why this matters in the context of 90-day TLS, and then step-by-step insights into how it actually works. As always, we are recording this presentation and we'll share it with you after the webinar. If you've got any questions during the presentation, we'd love to hear them. Please pop them into the chat function and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. Henry and Tim, over to you.
Thank you, Leah. How are you doing today, Henry?
And not too bad yourself, Tim?
Yeah, well, I've got a little bit of a voice thing, as you can tell, so maybe maybe everybody can tolerate that for the purposes of this webinar. So we want to talk today about certificate discovery. We thought it would be interesting in the beginning to share this data point. Henry, what does this 97% say?
Basically, 97% of organizations don't have an idea and the visibility of where their certs are, and it is a big risk.
Yeah, and this is from, this is regarding digital identities in particular. So that is a risk. It's a huge risk, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't know what you don't know and a certificate expires, you run the risk of knocking out a specific application that is critical to your business.
Yeah, and outages are the main thing that occur. Like a lot of people talk about, the consequences of if unexpected certificate expirations. The real consequence 99% of the time is that something stops working. We build our systems to depend on these certificates and expect these certificates. And when system A cannot connect to a valid certificate on system B, then system A just doesn't do the thing it should do with system B. It doesn't pass the information or issue the command or whatever. And as a consequence, or accept the information. And as a consequence, business processes just stop. And that's the real thing that occurs, right? Is certificate outages. And this happens to everybody. So just earlier this year, this is just a few logos we grabbed real quick. Just earlier this year, we saw high visibility outages of services from the likes of Starlink, Microsoft, Bank of Ireland. This is where their customer facing services went down, and the root cause is known to be that a certificate expiration occurred and the certificate was not successfully renewed and installed. And like in the case of the Microsoft incident, which happened just a month ago, maybe, there was a worldwide outage of Office 365. Like, it was incredible. And in recent years, we've seen this occur to the likes of Nintendo, LinkedIn, Equifax, many companies, many banks, many companies who absolutely should have the technical ability to get these things right. These are very technically astute organizations who are very good at security, who have these problems. And then, of course, there was the O2 problem. You remember the O2 occurrence, Henry?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A certificate that was in a router that expired and there was no visibility on it and knocked out pretty much everyone's cell phone usage. And that was
40 million people. 40 million people on a variety of providers, including O2 and SoftBank, in a variety of companies, or countries rather, lost all of their data, cellular data usage for almost a day. And and the root cause ultimately turned out to be a certificate that expired without replacement. So this is a thing, this is a real thing. This isn't imagined, this isn't hypothetical, this is an actual problem that affects the best of the best on an ongoing basis. Now, this is getting worse, right, Henry?
Oh, absolutely. Given the fact that for everyone that's listening, that has listened to the webinars, this is going to get worse as things move along into the future of how SSL certs are going to be issued and how long they're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so like if you think about even when the O2 outage occurred, for instance, at that point we were still in the era of 2-year certificates. We may even have been in the era of 3-year certificates. When Equifax occurred, we absolutely were in the era of 3-year SSL certificates. SSL certificates, aka TLS, is now capped at 1 year, and as we'll get into, sometime in the foreseeable future is going to go down to 90 days. Nobody knows exactly when, but that is coming. And if you look at it, like this is kind of how certificates have gone down over time, right? Back once upon a time, 15 years ago, you could get a 10-year certificate, a 15-year certificate, throw it on the machine and say the certificate will last as long as the machine will. I'll never think about this ever again. And then with the SAIA browser form, it was limited to 3 years, and then it moved down, down, down. At present, the limit is 1 year, which was forced by Apple a couple years ago. We are expecting 90 days are coming. And if you want to look at the real long term, Google even has a proposal that would reward anybody who's using a certificate that's only 10 days long by removing revocation checking as a requirement. So if that were to become reality, then you could imagine a bunch of people moving to 10-day certificates. So this is very, very, very real in terms of the reduction of term. And if the terms reduce, then the amount of incidents you need, episodes you need to replace those certificates just continues to increase, right? The faster that we have to cycle our certs because they're expiring, the more times we have to get those certs replaced, the more risk moments there are where this might fail. And this doesn't even include the fact that sometimes unforeseen events occur, like these events here, Henry, right? So external forced revocation or internal forced revocation because there's a problem with your own certificate. These are very real things too, right?
Absolutely. You have to, if in the event that something like what you're showing on the screen actually occurs, you need to do a quick force revocation to replace them accordingly. And the shorter lived the cert, the less exposure you have in the public world or internal world to have it compromised.
Yeah, so these first 3 bullets are real examples of things that really occurred. In 2021, it became one of the public CAs basically published a document that made it clear that they had invented a way to detect exposed private keys. And people immediately went out and started to use this method, and many private keys were detected that were in use where the owners didn't know those private keys had been published on bulletin boards and things like that. And then CAs just went through and mass revoked these things because they had to. And they did that with a 24-hour notice because those are the rules. And suddenly these folks who did not know, now their private key was exposed, granted, but they didn't know that. And all of a sudden, their certs went away. There was a similar episode in, I think it was 2021, where it became clear to the community that there was a very popular tool that was being used to generate certificate serial numbers. And so certificate serial numbers need to have 64 bits of entropy, which means there's 64 ones or zeros that are unpredictable. And it became clear after some examination that this popular tool was always using 0 for the first bit. That every single number it put out had 0 for the first bit, which meant that there was no entropy there. That was not a predictable number, an unpredictable number. It was a predictable number. It was always 0, which meant the amount of entropy in the serial number was not 64 bits, it was 63 bits. And lots of public CAs had to revoke millions of certificates over this. We've seen OCP intermediates OCSP intermediates proved to be inadequate, and as a result of that, large tranches of certs had to be revoked and reissued. Then there are zero-day vulnerabilities. There's things like Heartbleed that come along. And even though you did nothing wrong, there's the zero-day vuln in your software that you use, and suddenly you're told, look, I'm sorry, these certificates are compromised. They need to be revoked. These are all things that really happen in the real world. And then there's the new ones. They're the ones we don't know about. Like maybe right now, today, someone is standing at a whiteboard thinking of a genius way to attack cryptography, and all of a sudden we're going to have to replace all of our certs. And if nothing else, we know that quantum computers are going to force us to replace every certificate that uses RSA or ECC today, because quantum computers will break these algorithms. It's just a matter of time. So first of all, you have certificate expirations that occur, but second of all, oftentimes these things come along, these certificate revocation events that might be without your knowledge, they might not be your fault, they might happen in mass doses, and they're reality, they're not avoidable. So certificate replacement is a real need. And this is where we come to the concept of certificate agility. So the basic idea of certificate agility builds on the concept of crypto agility. Crypto agility states that we need to be able to swap out our cryptography whenever we need to at any given time to keep it current. Now, most of our cryptography is gated by certificates, which means that in order to achieve crypto agility, you need to have certificate agility. And the basic definition you see here is you need to have the ability to replace any and all certificates in your environment at any time. So every certificate I have in my environment, I need to be able to replace it error-free and immediately. It needs to be precise. I need to be able to get only the certificates I need, but I need to get the right certificates at any volume, up to including all of them. And I need to be able to verify that this is done. And if you don't have true certificate agility, first of all, if you don't meet these 5 bullets, you don't have true certificate agility. Second of all, if you don't have true certificate agility, you are not equipped to deal with the real world occurrences that may happen that could cause you certificate outages. So what's the solution to this, Henry?
Automation is the solution.
Automation is the solution.
And it's the future.
So, but what are these? Tell us about the problems with automation.
So even with automation, the thing you have to realize is that as you need to automate as much as you can within your environment, you need to make sure that you don't get into the situations that Tim had just described in the previous slides. If you do, you have a bigger problem on your hand that you should have implemented automation in your environment. Biggest problem for all of this is when it comes to certificate management for these is that you may want to do automation, but you run into problems where you are in a large organization where you know that you need to implement automation, but all your departments are siloed accordingly, and they may not know that they need it because they are not in this specific world, but you as an organization know that. Other cases too is in a large organization, you could have CA diversity, meaning that you are not consuming certificate from one CA. It could be multiple CAs along the way. So therefore, you have to figure out how to manage all of that in a specific, either individually or in a central system. The other thing you worry about too is diverse lifespan. To what Tim has mentioned, today we're at 398 days. 90 days will be coming in the future. Right. Sometime in we expect it in 2024, and then further down the road, it could be 10 days. So if diverse lifespan is occurring and will occur and will eventually slowly shrink, so that has to be a part of that mix as well.
Yeah, and different certificate types also, right? I mean, I guess that's covered under CA diversity, but it isn't only TLS certificates. You probably have client certs, you probably have SMIME, you probably have other certificate types that can also expire and leave you in a lurch.
Absolutely correct. We only talk about TLS because that is the most pressing topic that is coming to play. But to Tim's point, any cert and all cert comes into play, and it can be a challenge, and you may not be realizing this until it could be a little too late.
And so this is where certificate management comes in.
Absolutely. So big pluses when it comes to certificate management, you have reliability. You have a potential single source where you could get enough details to know that when a cert expires to prevent that specific cert from expiration. And then you could automate that cert away, which then leads to the next point, which is efficiency. Because if you have an ability to see everything in a certificate management solution, you are not then going to each respective CA to find the cert, because the time that you spend to go look for it is time wasted and it's inefficient in an organization. Also, too, you could be looking at a specific, let's just say you don't have certificate management in your environment and you believe you have the right data, but it could be inaccurate because it could be you looked at CA1 or System 1, but realistically it came from System 2. But because you don't have a certificate management solution, you're taking it as face value, which could create inaccuracies. But using a cert management platform, it could help you consolidate everything in one location, so you do know it's from a single source, regardless of the CA diversity you have. On top of that, you have the visibility and the monitoring, which goes back to preventing outages. Notifications can be set up to let your own constituents know when they're about to expire, or if they renew, or if they do not renew as well. Cost saving is that you consolidate all of it. Again, it's great to give everyone options, but if you give too many options, then you have too much costs, and then you have a bigger problem on your hand from a cost perspective. But from a cert management platform in a single location, you can also consolidate and manage everything from one place and help you reduce the amount of expenditures you have in your environment. And not to mention, in an organization, a larger org, you may have your own security policy, which could have a specific section for certificate or PKI, where you want to have compliance and or governance around it. So therefore, you can slowly enforce it within the organization to prevent anybody from generating some random certificate that isn't compliant to your organization.
And these are all great benefits, but let's not be confused that probably that first bullet, avoiding unexpected expirations and therefore outages, is the best of these, the most important of these by far. But Henry, for this to work, we need to know what the certificates are.
Absolutely.
Can't automate something you don't know exists. And so that's what we're here to spend the rest of the webinar on today, is certificate discovery. So tell us about certificate discovery.
So from a Certigo's perspective, in our system today, we do offer different ways to do certificate discovery. For anyone that is using our solution today, we thank you. But for anyone that does not know, we have a platform that could do certificate management. And I'll start from left to the right. When it comes to your public certificates, we offer a way for you to be able to provide us a list of domains or IPs and the port for us to go to the public world and find that given certificate that could be used in the location you specify, pull it to a central platform, in this case, Certigo Certificate Manager, and allow you to do exactly on the previous slide of what Tim what we showed in terms of monitoring, reliability, accuracy, and potential notifications of those given certificates. So it's all in one location. Moving to the middle one.
And that is done entirely by our SaaS service external to your network, because these are public facing servers. So then let's clarify, Henry, this is for public facing infrastructure. You might have public certs, which is to say certificates that are issued off public routes by a public CA. But if those are behind a firewall, then the public search will not find them because they're firewalled, right?
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Right. So let's be clear what we mean by the nomenclature here. Although the vast majority of your public CA certs are probably public facing because that's what they're for, it's not necessarily 100% of them.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, go on.
Which is a good segue to the next one, which is the middle option, where To Tim's point, you could be issuing a public cert. It could be used within your network as well. And you may want to know those given certificates that's within your network, whether it is public trust or private trust as well.
Right.
And whereby we could deploy an agent in your environment and scan your internal network as well. It would be the same concept as the public certificate discovery as well. The only slight difference is you would provide us internal domain namespace, internal IPs, and internal port, and then the agent would then do this canvassing of the given, it would canvass the area based on what you provided to then find the certificates that could be listening on that given specific socket, then pull that detail back into a single platform for you to view, monitor, and have accurate data in one central location.
And Henry, it's possible here, right? If I'm doing the public one, the leftmost box, or if I'm using the middle one with the network agent, it's possible for me to discover certificates that I'm not the owner of, correct? But I
Absolutely.
don't assign them, I don't manage them, but I could still discover them.
Absolutely. Our discovery tool does not care who owns it or what CA is issued. It pulls the certificate data into the platform. So to your point, Tim, it could be a certificate from Sectigo. It could be an internal cert. Heck, it could be a self-signed cert, which could be even more dangerous.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it's anything that we can
Yeah,
connect.
or a cert from any public CA, right? It doesn't have to be Sectigo, it could be anybody.
Correct.
Right. Okay. All right, go on.
And then the last option, you could have a CA that's within your environment. In this case, it could be in a traditional Active Directory environment where certs are issued from a Microsoft CA and then certificates stored within Active Directory. We have another agent we can deploy that could talk to your Active Directory and find all certs published inside AD and or the Microsoft CA to be able to pull all those certificates issued into a centralized certificate management solution. So this goes beyond the regular TLS certificates that most customers are weary of. This could pull in additional details of user certs, device certs, code signing certs, internal SSL certs as well into a central location for you to be able to monitor it, get accurate data, and to also notify you of those given specific certificates of when they expire.
Okay, so to clarify, the leftmost box and the box in the middle are really methods of discovering TLS certificates, which is important because this is most of what we're going to need, and this is where the largest risk lies. However, like we talked about, there are other kinds of certificates, and by pulling into the AD or the MSCA, we can also discover a cadre of other certificates that are not necessarily TLS, but also that will expire, that also might cause you problems, and that also you probably care about. Is that right, Henry?
100%.
Okay. So, all right. So I think you provided some screenshots. So what are we looking at here?
So this is the screenshot out of our certificate management solution where I created a task to scan public domain namespaces. And this is the result that we're getting back in terms of when we scan those specific common names that's listed on the leftmost column. This is basically us saying, here's a list of the domains we want to scan. Here's the port, and then SCM will take care of it and go do the scan and pull the data into a central system. The data that you're seeing here is it's pretty much what's potentially in a certificate. The name of the cert, how long they're valid for, who issued it, the algorithm, the serial number, and a slew of other details that is within the certificate so that you're able to then visibly see where they're potentially also located as well, so that you can consolidate from a discovery perspective into our platform.
Right. And I see it's check boxes to the left of these certs. Presumably I can take actions on them. I can do various things, expand them for more information, etc. Right, Henry? That's what those check boxes are there to indicate.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right. And now what's this one?
So this one is a discovery scan where the network agent is deployed in a customer's environment. And this is just an example where I provided that network agent with a list of locations to run certificate discovery. And this is the result that gets pulled into the certificate management platform. And again, the layout is the same exactly as the previous slide, but as you can see, the data collected here is slightly different in terms of the name of the cert and which CA may have issued it, so that you can clearly see that it is finding various certificate types within your, or in this case, my test environment, for you to do exactly the same action as Tim had asked before, where I could view the cert with more details and move them into a different location inside the system for notification, reporting, and so forth.
All right, and then so I think this was sort of your slide of benefits of certificate discovery. So
yeah, so it's more of a summary in terms of what we've discussed previously. In terms of if we do the certificate discovery, it does help you to reduce risk, which goes all the way back to the first slide we had, where 97% of organization do not have visibility. If you run certificate discovery and pull it into a central system, it will help you reduce the risk. And then also helps you gain control of potential, you have no clue where the certs are, or it could be a rogue cert that you were not aware of because of some department decided to go left field by accident and fix that.
Yeah, let's take a second to talk about rogue certs before you move on. So this basic concept, right? This happens all the time, is someone somewhere in the organization is doing dev work. They might be in the development department, they might not, right? Frequently we see some entire other department, the CMO wants to build something to generate leads and service customers and delight customers. The head of customer service wants something to help the customers out, and they actually get their own resources in to do it. And one of the things those resources do is they buy certs. They put the certs in. Certs are fine. They collect their check and they go off to work for a different client. And nobody knows those certs are operating. And then what happens is over the course of the year, this becomes a valuable thing that's, generating leads or solving customer problems or delivering services that you're being paid for or whatever it is. And then sometime in the future, at a date that no one's expecting, suddenly this revenue generating service or this customer satisfaction creating service isn't working, just stops working one day, and nobody knows why. And everybody runs around with their hair on fire, and they go to the colo to see if the light's on, and somewhere along the line it occurs to them to look for certificates. And before that occurs, everybody has a lot of heartache, everybody has a bad day, customers can't get what they need, or internal systems can't work. And this sort of thing goes on all the time. And this is what we call rogue certs, certs that you didn't even know were a thing until you found out the hard way one day because your services stopped working, because they stopped working and they took you down. So sorry, continue, Henry, but that's a good term to define, I think.
I hope the audience understands that is a very, very big issue that can occur and will occur. It's not fun when that happens. But continuing on, when you do certificate discovery, it can be a heavy lift at once, but once you start implementing it, it becomes simple housekeeping for you to keep track of what is happening within your organization. To again go back to the first little box on the left-hand side, to help you reduce risk. The housekeeping is absolutely necessary for every organization, no matter how big or small you are. Also, too, by doing those cert discovery, it also helps you stay agile, which goes all the way back to slide 4 or 5, where you need certificate agility, because in the event that you do have a cert that you have an application that runs into a problem because of a vulnerability, a misissuance, anything you can think of, you need to be able to stay agile to find them and then replace them fairly quickly to minimize any potential damage that it could cause the organization.
All right. Okay. So yeah, so in summary, certificate discovery is a capability that's available. It is a good idea. It is the best practice. Henry, I think to do certificate discovery, though, you do need an automation platform, right? It's not a standalone service.
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
Right. So, but, you know, as part of your automation solution, certificate discovery is an important capability. You don't want a solution that doesn't offer it. You do want to make sure that you take advantage of it, and you know, and have those certificates in your purview and in your visibility so that you can avoid the problems that comes with that. All right, so that's our prepared content. We've left some time for Q&A. If you did like this conversation, I do run a podcast that's focused on PKI and digital identity and certificates and CLM and security and things like that with Henry's and my co-worker, Jason Sirocco. And Jason and I are putting up new episodes every week. Most weeks we're putting up 2 new episodes. You can get us wherever you listen to podcasts, or just search for Root Causes Podcast. Will probably be the first thing you find. And with that, I think we're ready for questions. Leah, do we have any questions?
We did get a few, yes.
Okay.
First question is, how long does scanning take?
I can take that question. So it would be based on the size of what you're trying to scan. It could be anywhere from seconds to hours, simply because the more you provide us, the more different locations we need to look for. So there's not really much of a singular answer. It is based on where and what we're scanning and how large the data set is.
But hours, not days.
No, not days, hours.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right. Okay, cool.
Great. Next question is, when scanning a public domain, is it possible to get all the certs issued for its subdomains without knowing them?
Yes, correct. So for anybody that knows SSL certificates, if we scan a specific domain and say that domain has a wildcard cert, we can find that certificate because all the subdomains is in the, sorry. If that certificate is a multi-domain, I apologize, I misspoke. And if that certificate contains all of the subdomains in it, then we will find all of it, all the certificates that is attached to for that cert.
Okay, so let's be clear on this. Let's say I have mysite.com and there is a cert that is issued for shop.mysite.com. If I just put in the FQDN of mysite.com, it's not going to see shop.mysite.com, right? I would have to put in shop. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if the worry is from the questioner, if the worry may be as follows: what if there are subdomains I don't know about? How do I find out about them and the certificates for them? So if that's correct, I'd say one thing is, in the event that they are in multi-domain certificates, you might find them because you find the other domains you do know about. In the scenario, though, that there's a specific subdomain, I'm not aware of it, and someone issues a very pinpoint cert that only has that subdomain in the FQDN, is there a way to discover that, Henry?
Not with the discovery, but there is, not specifically not in our discovery at this moment, but it doesn't necessarily mean you couldn't provide us the domain names from your domain server to then be able to scan those locations.
So maybe the answer is you need to, it's worth your while to take a step to audit your subdomains. And then when you know all your subdomains, then you can discover all your certs. I think that's probably the path forward, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. How often can I run these scans? Can I make them happen automatically?
Yes, the answer is yes to that. The scan examples I showed you was a manual trigger within the platform itself, but you can set it to run automatically on a regular cadence of your choosing. And what I mean by that, it could be every second day, every week, every month, every quarter, and so forth. And it's as you are choosing when you define what you want to scan.
Do we have a cadence that we recommend, Henry?
Currently today, I would normally say quarterly. If and when 90-day comes, I would probably say every 50 days or so, just to be safe, so that you are able to find the certs well in advance of a potential certificate expiration.
So daily scans shouldn't be necessary.
Not really. Not until somewhere in the very, very near future, very, very far future.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Then someone's asking, what am I getting from the public scan that I can't get from us CRT.sh?
Oh, so these are, yeah, that's a great question. Can I field this one? Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
They're not the same thing. I mean, it's an astute question, and you know, whoever asked that, you know, what CRT for everybody else, what CRT.sh does is every time that a public CA issues a public certificate, they log it in what's called a certificate transparency log. And these are logs of all the public certificates. And CRT.sh is a tool that's open to the public that anyone can use, where it looks at all of the certificates in all of the CT logs, the certificate transparency logs, and it puts them all essentially in a single searchable database. So you can go look for specific certs. So I think what the questioner is saying is, well, if I go to crt.sh and I put in my domains, won't I see all the certificates for my domains? And what you're going to see is a little different. What you're going to see is all of the certificates that public CAs have issued for your domains. And that's good information, but that doesn't mean those certificates are installed. It doesn't mean they're operating. It doesn't mean there is also a concept of what they call a pre-certificate, which is if a CA is preparing to issue a certificate, but the job is never complete and the certificate never gets issued, it will still show up in CRT.sh as a pre-certificate. CRT.sh is also going to show you expired certificates, revoked certificates, replaced certificates, because it doesn't know those things. And so well, it knows if they're expired, it knows if they're revoked, but it doesn't necessarily know that a certificate is in use. So viewing CRT.sh as a surrogate for doing a public certificate scan isn't right. There will be a whole lot of overlap. It's a very useful tool, but it's asking a different question, and therefore it's showing you a different thing. And this can lead to disconnects, because what CRT.sh is doing is not the same as viewing the actual certificates that are actually in use on the servers for the domains that you are running.
Okay, great. Another question is, where does the agent live? Does it go on every server or a single server that goes out and scans?
I can take that one. So the answer is it lives within your environment, and it's really, so the short answer is it can be on one system that would canvas your environment, providing your network is fairly flat. If you have segregation, then it could be, and there's no crosstalk between each segregation, then you may need multiple agents. But ultimately, if you have a very, very flat network, you can deploy one agent to be able to canvas everything within your network.
Okay, great. The next question I can probably answer. Can you share the link to the trial to do discovery? I'll put them in the email that we send out with the webinar recording, and then you can test it for yourself. Then another question was, what environments are supported for internal scans?
So in terms of our agent, it installs on Windows or Linux. When it does the scan, it doesn't really matter what it is. As long as we can make a TLS connection to be able to find the certificate, we'll pull it into the system.
Okay, great. And then I think we've got one more at the moment. For public scan, do you only discover certificates issued from Certigo?
The answer is no. We discover all of them. It does not matter who issues it. It could be Certigo, it could be a Digi, it could be Let's Encrypt, it could be GoDaddy, so forth and so forth and so forth. So it is agnostic to the point where it can find any certificate in the public world.
Yeah, and this is important, right? Because even if you think you've standardized on a certain CA, if we go back to our discussion of rogue certificates, it never works. Like nobody actually manages to standardize on one CA because certificates come in through a variety of sources, and you've got people in your organization who don't know you're standardized on this, or don't particularly care, or they're not in your organization. And as a consequence, you really have to have a discovery solution that is bigger than just a single public CA.
Okay, great. We got one more question in actually.
Cool.
What is the impact to the network of the agent? It seems they have a lot of other agents for services already, and adding more scanning agents scares them a little bit.
So the scan is very passive. All it is if for everyone on the call, if you want to visualize it, it's sort of like making a call to a website, but not loading the website. And you request a certificate during that transit. Once we get the certificate, we kill the connection. So from how noisy it is, it's only doing a TLS handshake. Beyond that point, there should be no adverse effects within a customer's network.
Okay, great. That's all the questions on our side. So I think we'll wrap up here then. Thank you everyone for your time, and thanks Henry and Tim. If you've got any more questions, do get in touch with the Sectigo team directly. We've also got plenty more webinars coming up throughout the year. Keep an eye on our website for details. The next one is on October 12th, where we're summarizing the latest industry news and updates from the CAP forum. And yeah, we hope to see you there. And thanks for listening today.
Thank you.